She tried to take $8.5 million, half my business, and the ranch my grandfather built. But in the end, the judge saw the truth. That's the line I never thought I'd say about the woman I once loved more than life itself. My name is Jake. I'm 51 years old, and this is the story of how the life I built, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, almost slipped through my fingers because of betrayal I never saw coming. It started small, as betrayals often do. Melissa and I had been married for over 20 years. I had built a construction business with my bare hands, starting with a single rusted truck and a willingness to work until my knuckles bled. Over time, contracts grew bigger, workers multiplied, and one day I realized I had not just a company, but an empire, a business worth millions. And alongside it stood the ranch, the land my grandfather had bought in the 1940s. That ranch was more than soil and fences. It was legacy, sweat, and memory. For most of our marriage, Melissa seemed indifferent to the numbers. She lived comfortably, traveled, enjoyed what the business provided, but she never asked about depreciation schedules, loan structures, or net margins. Then, all at once, she started asking. At first, it seemed like curiosity. She'd glance at invoices, ask what a subcontractor did, or wonder aloud about asset depreciation. But then she started writing things down. Not casually, not like someone learning, but meticulously, like a student preparing for an exam. And I remember sitting at my poker night, beer in hand, telling my buddies about it. They exchanged looks I didn't understand then. "Careful, Jake," one of them muttered. "That kind of sudden interest usually means something's up." I laughed it off. She was my wife. Why would she be plotting anything against me? But in the weeks that followed, the questions sharpened. Not just about business, but about the ranch, its value, and how much equity was tied up into the land. I should have listened to my gut. I should have connected the dots. Instead, I told myself it was harmless. That was my first mistake. The night I walked into my home office and saw Melissa bent over my desk with her phone camera aimed at contracts was the night my world tilted. She froze when I cleared my throat. The light from her phone screen caught her face, guilt written across it. "Oh, Jake, I was just organizing." "Organizing?" I asked, my voice tight. "Since when does organizing involve photographing contracts?" Her smile was thin, rehearsed. "I didn't want to bother you. I was just curious about how things work." I didn't believe a word. That night, after she went to bed, I called Greg, my lawyer, a man I'd trusted for decades. When I explained what I'd seen, his silence told me more than words could. "Jake, you need to be careful. If she's preparing to make a move, the first thing she'll try is to freeze assets. Protect the ranch, protect the business, and don't confront her yet, not until we're ready." I hung up, my chest heavy, and for the first time in my life, I looked at my wife not as a partner, but as a stranger. The following weeks were hell. I watched her closely, noting every late-night call, every whispered conversation, and I couldn't ignore the growing distance between us. The woman who once laughed at my jokes and held my hand at rodeos was gone, replaced by someone cold, calculating. And then another suspicion crept in, darker than the first. What if Melissa wasn't working alone? I thought of Kyle, my business partner. We had built the company side by side, shared victories and losses, but lately he'd been evasive, skipping meetings, avoiding eye contact. Could it be? Was betrayal surrounding me, not just at home, but at work too? The thought gnawed at me until I could no longer ignore it. And that's when I hired Patricia, a private investigator.
Patricia was efficient, discreet, and relentless. Within weeks, she handed me a folder that made my blood run cold. Melissa hadn't just been planning for months. She had been strategizing for over a year. Bank records, secret meetings, and worst of all, photographs. Melissa and Kyle together. Not as business associates, not as friends, but as lovers. I stared at the evidence, bile rising in my throat. The woman I had shared my bed with for decades. The man I had trusted with contracts worth millions, conspiring together. And not just in romance. Patricia's notes detailed whispered plans about the business, about taking him for everything he's got, about the ranch being the crown jewel. It wasn't just betrayal. It was war. For nights I barely slept. Rage and heartbreak battled in my chest. But beneath the chaos, a new clarity emerged. If they thought I would roll over, they didn't know me. My grandfather hadn't fought through drought and debt to hand me land just to have it stolen. I hadn't built a business through blood and sweat to watch it crumble in the hands of traitors. I decided then, if they wanted war, they would get it, but it would be on my terms.
Greg and I met in secret, away from the house, away from prying eyes. Together, we restructured. The business was fortified, trusts were adjusted, and clauses buried deep in contracts became my shield. The strategy was simple, brutal, and brilliant. Let her think she was winning. Let her walk into court with a smile, believing she'd cornered me, and then show the truth. For weeks, I played my part. Melissa grew bolder, her voice sharper, her disdain less hidden. Kyle stopped pretending altogether, treating me like a relic soon to be discarded. I let them. Every insult, every smirk, every betrayal, I swallowed it, all while tightening the net. Patricia's investigation deepened, and the file thickened with evidence. Every lie Melissa told, every dollar Kyle siphoned, every meeting they thought was hidden, all catalogued, all ready for the day of reckoning. The hardest part was silence, acting weak when every bone in my body wanted to roar. But revenge is patient, and when the court date finally arrived, I was ready. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and nerves. Melissa sat across from me, her lawyer smirking, Kyle whispering in her ear. She looked radiant, triumphant, the picture of a woman certain she had already won. When the judge asked if I contested her demands, $8.5 million, half the business and the ranch, I leaned forward, my voice calm. "No, Your Honor, I agree." Gasps rippled through the room. Melissa's smile widened, her lawyer preening, but Greg slid a thick folder across the table. "However," I continued, "there are details the court should see." The judge flipped through page after page. Photographs, bank transfers, secret meetings, Patricia's meticulous notes. Melissa's smile faltered, then collapsed altogether. Kyle's face drained of color. The judge's gavel struck like thunder. "Given this evidence, the settlement will reflect betrayal and misconduct. Mrs. Harland will receive $800,000. The ranch and business remain solely in Mr. Harland's name. As for Mr. Kyle Sanders, further legal inquiry is warranted." The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa stared at me, fury and disbelief battling in her eyes. Kyle looked like a man already condemned. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. Melissa left soon after, bitterness in her wake. Kyle vanished from the company, his reputation shredded. The ranch remained mine, the business thrived, and life, though scarred, moved forward. But victory is never clean. Nights still find me staring at the ceiling, wondering how love had curdled into betrayal, how trust had been bartered for greed. And yet, when I walk the ranch at sunrise, the fields golden with light, I remember my grandfather's words, "Protect what's yours, Jake." Not out of greed, but out of honor. That's what I did. I protected it, not just the land, not just the business, but my dignity. Because in the end, the greatest revenge isn't shouting or destroying. It's surviving. It's standing tall while those who tried to cut you down are left choking on the dust of your resilience. And so I tell this story not as a victim, but as a man who refused to be erased. She tried to take $8.5 million, my family ranch, and everything I had built. But the judge saw the truth. And so did I. If this story spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters.